Good evening. I'm Ramon Robinson, Director of Transportation for Anne Arundel County and the Vice Chair of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, or the BRTB for short. On behalf of the BRTB, I want to thank you for joining us this evening to learn more about the draft 2022 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, and the associated air quality conformity determination. Both of these important documents are open for review and public comment through Friday, July the 9th, 2021. The purpose of this evening's meeting is a chance for you to learn more about the key projects, major changes from last year, and funding levels. This overview will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions and learn where to submit your comments. Tonight, I am joined by two planners from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, Mr. Keith Kacharik, who will provide a detailed overview of the TIP, and Ms. Nicole Aber, who will share information on the air quality conformity determination. Then we will conclude with a question and answer session that will be followed by information on how you can submit comments to the BRTB. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat box. Leave a voicemail at 855-925-2801, extension 8248, or email them to h2050@publicinput.com, or you can text your questions by sending the message L371 to the number 73224. It's a lot of numbers. So now I will turn it over to Mr. Keith Kucharik to go through the TIP presentation. Keith?
Thank you, Ramon. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. As Ramon said, my name is Keith Kacharik, and I am a transportation planner at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. I help manage the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Tonight, I'll be giving a brief overview of what the TIP is and a broad summary of what's included in the 2022 to 2025 TIP. The TIP includes all federally funded and regionally significant projects that are programming funding over the next 4 fiscal years. Federally funded projects are those that receive funds from either the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. Regionally significant projects are those that may not necessarily be federally funded, but are of regional importance. And these are generally capacity improvement projects that must be included in our air quality model to ensure that the Baltimore region adheres to the air quality standards. So in this year's TIP, there are 129 projects listed, 6 of which are new this year. The TIP programs a total of $4.04 billion in federal, state, local money. 69% of that is federal funding, and 31% of that is state and local funding. And that money goes towards all types of projects related to transportation, including highway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian. And they're focused on operating and maintaining our transportation system. It's important to note that the TIP is a fiscally constrained document, meaning program funds cannot exceed what is reasonably expected to be available from local, state, and federal sources. Additionally, projects are evaluated to ensure that they meet our regional transportation planning goals, such as safety, accessibility, and prosperity. These goals are laid out in our long-range transportation plan, which includes projects that extend out to 25 years or more. So projects in the long-range plan are more or less conceptual in nature. And as those projects move from the conceptual stage to the implementation stage, that's when they'll move into the short-range transportation improvement program. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the funding in the TIP. We've created an interactive dashboard that allows users to explore funding by different project sponsor or by category. I'm going to highlight just a few of these. So if you look at the graphic on the screen now, it shows how we break down projects in the TIP by category. And as you can see, there's 9 categories that we have in the TIP. This year, the largest category of funding is highway preservation with about 33%, followed by highway capacity at about 24%. And transit preservation is next at roughly 18%, followed by ports at 11%. Smaller amounts in emission reduction strategy, commuter rail preservation, and so on account for the remainder. It should be noted that there is some crossover in funding categories. For example, highway preservation projects may have some environmental safety elements to them. Emission reduction could include replacing transit vehicles with more efficient vehicles, which could fall under transit preservation. But this just gives us a general idea of how the money is being spent. So this graphic now on the screen shows a breakdown of funding by project sponsor or agency. The largest source of program funds is the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration, with nearly $1.5 billion of the $4.04 billion that's programmed. The next largest source is the Maryland Transit Administration at about $1 billion. And it's important to note too that the $1 billion for MTA does not include the vast majority of operating funds, which are state funds only. The Maryland Transportation Authority, or MDTA, accounts for $675 million. The Maryland Port Administration has about $455 million programmed. Most of that is for the Howard Street Tunnel project, and we'll discuss that project a little later on. And finally, locally sponsored projects, which are projects sponsored by Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Harford County, Howard County, and Queen Anne's County, program about $386 million. On this chart, you can see the blue, and that represents federal funding, and the orange represents the state funding. To dig into some of the larger categories a little deeper, I'm going to switch to a PowerPoint real quick. So if you bear with me while I switch over. Here we go. So I showed you earlier that the highway preservation was the largest funded category in the TIP. The graphic shows, this graphic shows a little bit further a breakdown. Since these projects tend to be a little bit smaller in nature, instead of breaking it down by individual projects, we break this down into project types. So you can see that bridge repair, deck replacement account for 38% of the category. Roadway resurfacing and rehabilitation is about 32% of this category, and about 18% of it is for other types of highway preservation projects. These are mostly SHA area-wide safety and spot improvement projects that are spread out over throughout the region, such as geometric improvements, guardrail installation, guardrail repairs, just basically smaller projects by SHA standards. Highway capacity funds is the second largest category, and this can be broken down mostly into a handful of larger projects. MDTA has a project on I95 between Baltimore and Harford County that will add express toll lanes from just north of Maryland 43 or White Marsh Boulevard to north of Maryland 24. This project is about 11 miles long and accounts for 2/3 of the highway capacity funds. 14% of the funds are for a project on the Baltimore Beltway, which expands the inner and outer loops by using the inside shoulder from I70 to White Marsh Boulevard. Another 5.5% is for Maryland 175 project, and 3.1% is for Maryland 32 roadway widening. So you can see that these 4 projects alone account for over 90% of the highway capacity funds. This slide here is a breakdown of the transit preservation funds. Again, most of this money goes to a few specific project areas. 42% goes towards projects that overhaul or replace metro and light rail vehicles. Another 26% is allotted for the bus and rail preventive maintenance, and about 14% is for metro and light rail improvements. Those projects are non-vehicle improvements such as track improvements and facility improvements. So MTA uses the public participation process for our TIP to meet the Federal Transit Administration's public participation requirements. So we include a breakdown of MTA funding in the TIP by category. The largest category by far is Section 5307C, which are capital requests in urbanized areas that are used for bus purchases, bus replacements, and preventive maintenance. This accounts for about $472 million, or nearly half of the MTA's total of $1 billion. The next largest category is Section 5337, which are state of good repair funds. These funds include preventive maintenance and mark improvements. And this category accounts for about $253 million. Congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ funds, make up the third largest category at about $219 million. And this funding is for projects aimed at reducing emissions and improving air quality. Before I talk about any specific projects in the 22 to 25 TIP, I wanted to quickly show how funding is varied by TIP year. So as you can see, the 2022 to 2025 TIP is slightly less than the 21 to 24 TIP, but it's still a little bit higher than the previous two TIP years. So overall, funding in the TIP remains fairly consistent year to year. I'm going to switch back now to the story map. And we'll talk about a few of the specific projects. So the first project I wanted to touch base on is the Multimodal Transportation Center in Parole, and that's in Anne Arundel County. The county has identified Westfield Mall as the location for this transportation center. The multimodal center will handle transfers between local and regional bus service, and it'll allow more docking area to serve both. This is programmed at just over $14 million in the TIP and is expected to be operational in 2025. The next project I wanted to talk about is the EastWest Bus Corridor in Baltimore City, which is a $12.6 million project that is designed to improve the bus service between East and West Baltimore. Planned strategies include dedicated bus lanes, peak-only bus lanes, intersection queue jump for buses, transit signal priority, bus stop optimization and accessibility improvements, and bus bulbs. Baltimore City expects this project to be operational in 2025. Baltimore City also has several roadway rehabilitation projects. Many of those include bicycle and pedestrian improvements. These include sections of Bel Air Road, 25th Street, Fremont Avenue, Madison Avenue, Park Heights Avenue. That should have been Madison Street, not Madison Avenue, I'm sorry. Patapsco Avenue and Pennington Avenue. Carroll County and Harford County have a combined 20 bridge improvement projects, which are utilizing federal and local funds. In Howard County, the $25.6 million US 29 Broken Land Parkway North-South Collector Road will be funded with all local tax increment financing, or TIF funds. This project will increase vehicular and pedestrian mobility, address safety concerns, and provide much needed capacity to meet future growth and development in the area. The project will provide a new central link to downtown Columbia for traffic coming from points southeast of Columbia and for US 29 traffic to and from the south. This project is expected to open to traffic in 2023. I talked about this project a little earlier, but I'll touch on it again real quick. MDOT SHA is expanding I695 from I70 to White Marsh Boulevard by converting the inside shoulders to new travel lanes. The vast majority of this $136 million funding for this project comes from toll credits. Widening is expected to be complete in 2024. In addition to this project, SHA will also be reconstructing the interchange at I-70. This $144 million project will eliminate the triple bridge configuration that currently exists, and that will help to improve safety, improve capacity, and provide operational improvements on the Beltway. This project is expected to be complete in 2027. I mentioned earlier the Maryland Port Administration, in partnership with the CSX Railroad, will reconstruct the Howard Street Tunnel to allow double stacking of containerized cargo to and from the Port of Baltimore. Completion of this tunnel will eliminate a major bottleneck in the national rail network, so it's really needed. This project is funded through a combination of federal discretionary grant funding, state funding, and private funding from CSX. Completion of the tunnel is expected in 2025. One of our new projects this year is a Maryland Transit Authority $102 million Transportation Authority, $102 million in toll revenues to replace the existing toll booths at the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel with overhead gantries. This will help to eliminate traffic queues at the toll plaza, improve both vehicular and employee safety, and help to improve air quality and reduce fuel consumption. MDTA expects this project to be completed in 2027. And finally, one last project that I want to highlight, and this is another one that I touched base on earlier, is the MDTA I95 Northbound Extension that will add express toll lanes from just north of White Marsh Boulevard to north of Maryland 24 in Harford County. The project will also reconstruct the interchange at Mountain Road, or Maryland 152, and also the interchange at Maryland 24. Maryland 24 itself will also be widened from 2 to 3 lanes from the interchange to just north of Singer Road. The project also includes construction of several noise walls and the reconstruction of 5 overpasses. TIP funding for this project is $646 million, and that'll utilize toll revenues as well to fund this project. This one is being done in phases. Several phases are already underway. Some are already complete, but the total completion for all the phases is expected in 2027. So without going into every project, I wanted to let you know that you can explore this map by project type. So if you're looking for specific projects that fall under a certain type of project, such as highways and bridges, you can tag that and explore those projects. You can look for transit projects or bicycle pedestrian projects or other types of projects on this interactive map. I should note too, though, that this map only includes transit projects that can be mapped. In other words, much of the transit money in the TIP is for regional projects such as bus repairs, bus purchases, MARC improvements, and others that can't be pinpointed on a map. They are included in the TIP document. You just can't show them on a map because they're regionally significant. So that's just a quick overview of the TIP process and a look at some of the major projects included in the 2022 to 2025 TIP. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Nicole Hebert, who will discuss some of the air quality components of the TIP. Nicole?
Thank you, Keith. As mentioned, I'm Nicole Hebert, and I serve as the air quality planner for the Baltimore Metropolitan Council and lead the air quality conformity determination process for the BRTB. The Clean Air Act requires that prior to federal approval, short and long-range transportation plan projects' air pollutant emissions be analyzed as a whole for regions that do not meet national ambient air quality standards for transportation-related pollutants. This analysis is referred to as a conformity determination, and the purpose is to ensure that the proposed transportation activities will not cause new air quality violations, worsen existing violations, or delay meeting an unmet standard. The Baltimore region currently does not meet two of these standards, which the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, terms non-attainment. Both are ozone standards, one established in 2008 and the other in 2015, with the newer standard being lower and more stringent. The 2015 ozone standard is set at 70 parts per billion, and in 2019, when EPA finalized non-attainment designations, the Baltimore region ozone level was at 75 parts per billion. These standards have been set by the EPA to protect public health and the environment. Ozone is particularly problematic because a variety of human health effects can be caused and exacerbated depending on exposure levels, including lung inflammation and damage, increased frequency of asthma attacks, and increased susceptibility to lung infections. High levels of ozone can also, on the ecological side of things, slow plant growth and increase disease and insect damage risks to sensitive plant species, which in turn affects biodiversity and habitat quality. Ozone forms through chemical reactions between oxides of nitrogen, or NOx, and volatile organic compounds, or VOC. Both NOx and VOCs are emitted by the transportation sector. Coordination with the EPA has established for the Baltimore region acceptable levels of NOx and VOCs from planned transportation projects that will ensure these projects will not cause new air quality violations, worsen existing violations, or delay meeting the 2008 and 2015 ozone standards. As summarized in the conformity determination, BMC staff estimated the amount of NOx and VOC emissions generated from vehicle travel associated with the implementation of projects in the draft 2022 to 2025 TIP and current long-range plan Maximize 2045. Both NOx and VOC emissions were found to be well below the allowable limits, thus finding the proposed draft TIP in conformity with the state implementation plan for meeting ozone standards. The Maryland Department of the Environment performed the analysis as well and confirmed these results. The interagency consultation group, which includes representatives from BRTB, the Maryland Department of Transportation, and MDE, has also reviewed the conformity determination and approved these results. Before the conformity determination can be approved, it's required that the public be given the opportunity to review and comment. And this is true for the draft TIP as well, and we want to hear from you. And if we can move the cursor, thank you. Over $4 billion worth of transportation investments and improvements are being planned that will shape our region's future for decades to come. So please let us know what you think. There are a few different ways to comment. The most interactive way to comment is through our project map, found through the BMC website and also through this story map at baltometro.org on the newsroom page announcing the draft TIP. This is the best way to view projects planned in your community. And if we can navigate to that interactive map. Thank you. So on this interactive map, you can navigate to projects within your community or any project you're interested in. These projects are represented by a dot or a line, and you can select that project to view project details. If you like the project, please click the heart. And if you have any project comments, please add your comments by clicking the box with the chat symbol and follow the prompts. There are many other ways comments can be submitted. They can be submitted online. If we could switch back to our comment page. Thank you. Comments can also be submitted online at publicinput.com/H2050 via voicemail at 855-925-2801, extension 8248, email at h2050@publicinput.com, through fax at 410-732-8248. And you can even submit comments through Twitter by tagging at Balto Metro Co. at Be More Involved and hashtag BRTB Listens. Comments are welcome through July 9th and will be considered prior to the BRTB vote on Tuesday, July 27th. We now have come to the question and answer portion of tonight's presentation. I will pass the stage over to Ramon. Ramon, do we have any questions to answer at this time?
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you both, Keith and Nicole, for this detailed overview that you gave us in regards to the tip and to the air conformity determination. I do see one question in the chat box, and that question was in regards to the presentation or having access to the presentation. If you're in the chat box, the presentation and the recording will be available later tomorrow. And there's also a link to the story map that will be used in the presentation. So all the information that you're seeing, you will have access to this and it will be available to you tomorrow. At this time, that is the only question that I see in the chat box. So if there are any additional questions that you may have for Keith or Nicole, please, you have the chat box that's available, so you can put your questions there. We'll try to get you an answer to that question. So while we're waiting on additional questions to come into the chat box, I definitely want to give kudos to the Baltimore Metropolitan Council and the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. One of the things that I have identified from the previous year's transportation improvement program is that there was definitely some information from the community last year in regards to having more transit as a percentage of the transportation improvement program. And so I do appreciate that this year there is kind of more of a transit component that's associated with the transportation improvement program. And of course, all the modes are significant as we are trying to make sure that we're satisfying our air quality conformity determination. Modal principles are very significant as it relates to that. So while I had that opportunity, I definitely want to give those kudos to the BRTB, BMC, and also point out that it is good to see that there are more transit projects that are associated with the transportation improvement program. So with that, I don't see any additional questions in the chat box. So I will just go ahead and wrap us up. I definitely want to thank those for joining us this evening. We want to remind you that the comment period is still open through July 9th, 2021. If you have any further questions or to submit your comments, please go to publicinput.com/H2050 to view our interactive map and share your comments. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Again, thank you to the Baltimore Metropolitan Council and staff, and thank you to the BRTB. We look forward to seeing your thoughts.